Welcome back to the JCPod, partner with Stare Down Sports. Stare Down greatness. We are officially under the triple digits for college football, and a week from today, we'll be 100 days away from NFL Week 1. But, because we are that far away, it also means that we're slowly starting into that dry period of the NFL offseason. While some more OTAs are slowly starting to begin, the news is starting to get a little bit quieter. And June 1st is approaching, where that will be some potential, probably have like a week or two of some big news of potential trades or other movement that happens, and then probably going to be all silent on the front. So, we got some NFL news to talk about today, needless to say. To go along with the NFL news, we'll talk a little bit about NBA. We got the Knicks have made the finals for the first time forever, so I just want to touch on some of the cool stats that have come out of that, because it's a really cool story in sports, and it's something I definitely want to touch on, especially when we have days like today where it's a little bit quieter on the NFL side with only a couple big things to talk about. So, first thing we'll talk about is Todd Monken has come out and praised Shedeur Sanders. He says the QB battle remains wide open during OTAs. Nothing really changed other than it's a different day and you're firing the same questions. Monken said, we're going to rotate these guys and play the best player, and we'll see. For this QB battle, I'm curious to see if it comes down. Obviously, whoever plays better should get the start, but you wonder if this is going to come down to a little bit more of a political side, where you got a owner who comes down and say, hey, I got to make about $240 million guaranteed. Why don't we see how he's doing since he's able to play? That is the one part of the story where I just kind of keep a little side eye at, because other than that, you kind of wonder, maybe Deshaun Watson is, there's one of, three things that can happen. Maybe Deshaun Watson actually is playing good and he's playing better than Shedeur. That's one of them. Maybe Shedeur is not playing the best, and Deshaun Watson's not playing the best either, but it's neither guy's really taking it from the other, so you're in a situation where you look at that there. Or it could be the third option, where we just talked about it. Potentially the owner comes down and is like, hey, we paid that guy a shit ton of money. I want that guy starting football games. Either way, it's going to be a really interesting year for Cleveland. They have a new head coach, so there's going to be some changes, obviously. He's offensive minded, so there's definitely going to be some changes on the offense. There's a chance they might have some if they can figure out this quarterback position. Their roster is good enough, and their schedules. If you look at their schedule is nice enough where if they were just able to figure out, like I said, the quarterback position, they could win enough games to make the playoffs. It's just going to come down to, can either of these two guys take that step forward, or is it going to end up being somebody else even potentially? We talked about Aaron Rodgers retiring last week. So, and I'm curious to see if this is going to end up sticking, but you got to think that, as of right now, I think I'm going to go with his word, and you got to assume that he's probably done. Nolan Smith for the Eagles has been arrested, nice English, for apparently driving 135 in a 70-mile-per-hour speed zone. He posted bond and was released shortly after. This is a story of hey, just another thing that's happened in the offseason, just another. If you had to guess where he went to college at, I'll give you a second to guess. If you said Georgia, you're correct. I'm not going to lie. The whole speeding thing with these Georgia athletes is just absolutely insane. What 1, 2, or 3 would be a coincidence. It's all right, whatever. There's just so many to the point where it's just even if it is just a coincidence, it just happens that it just keeps happening because let's be honest, there's so many. This probably happens a decent amount of places. It's just we hear about it more from Georgia than others, but starting to become a theme. Either way, it sounds like everything's going to be good. It just blew my mind. 135 and a 70. It's assuming it's a highway, either way, it's just yeesh, boy. That boy is flying down the road. So Jack Campbell, they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, which we talked about being a couple weeks ago. It's not a total issue, but you kind of look at it there's only a certain amount of guys who didn't get their 5th-year option picked up. So if you didn't get it, that could be a problem. But for Jack Campbell, it was not. And honestly, the more I learned about this, it was pretty fascinating. So the reason they didn't give him the 5th-year option is based on his position. He basically would have got defensive end or off-ball linebackers. I basically just edge rusher, defensive end. That's kind of how I'm just going to refer to in this conversation. He basically would have got defensive end or edge rusher money. So that would have been a fifth-year option that's at least it's $20 million annual salary. He probably would have made it like 25, close to 25, 30 a year potentially or something like that. So that's the whole reason. Partially they didn't do it, and then either way they end up coming to a deal with him. It's going to be 4 years, $81 million. So $51 million guaranteed, $20 million a year. Pretty decent deal. And it's just crazy to think about how that draft went for the Lions a couple of years ago, because they took Jahmyr Gibbs and they took Jack Campbell. Everyone basically was saying how dumb they were and how much of either a reach it was or just a bad decision in general. And you look back just a couple of years later, two cornerstones of the team, and not only that, especially in Jahmyr Gibbs' case, two guys that are, like I said, especially in Jahmyr Gibbs' case, two guys are kind of stars of their positions. Especially that Jahmyr Gibbs pick. I remember it was loud about them taking him. Like, we didn't see all that we could at Alabama. What's he gonna be in the NFL? Is he gonna be able to translate to be a good running back? And he's just an absolute stud. Giants have signed GM Joe Shane to a multi-year extension. So the team opted to stick with him following the 2025 season, which I'll admit, kind of surprising, because usually when you get a new head coach in there or a new GM, you kind of like to pair them with their own guy and not just have not rotating casts. That would have been the wrong word, but blending of not even cultures, I guess, but blending of like phases isn't the right word, but I generally cannot think of this word and it's actually like pissing me off. But basically, you don't want to blend like two timelines or two phases. Usually, you'd want to keep it like, all right, we're gonna try and do this, whatever. All right, if these guys didn't work out, clear the house. Basically, that's a new way of doing it now because it's really succeeded for a lot of these teams. Or if it just didn't work, get rid of GM, get rid of head coach, bring in two guys that share a mindset, will build together, and then it usually ends up working out because it's when you have the GM that's trying to stab the coach in the back or vice versa. Those are the type of situations that usually the team can see right through, and it becomes a big, big problem. Oh man, sorry about that. I won't lie. I had a little scratch on my back I couldn't reach, and all of a sudden I kind of tweaked my shoulder. I'm not gonna lie, that really, really hurt. That's like, I'm not gonna lie, that was some of the more painful type pain I don't even know how to describe it. It was like really, really sharp in the back something. I genuinely thought, and I won't lie to you, I haven't had, this is way off topic, but I haven't had shoulder dislocation issues since my surgery, thank the Lords. But that was one of the first ones in a while where it's like, man, that kind of was a close feeling to what it felt like before, right? But either way, that's not the point. It got me really, really off track. So yeah, let's go back to trying what I was going to say. Basically, so like I said with the whole Brian Daboll situation, since that didn't work, they got rid of Brian Daboll. And then they bring in John Harbaugh. You would have thought they would have brought in John Harbaugh's guy. But they're going to go with Joe Shane, and they're just going to keep him around. But you could kind of tell by the way he was talking at the press conference that it's like, he's definitely playing his words a little bit safer. And he's definitely like, that's a guy who knows that he's on thin ice, so he's trying to cover all bases, not ruffle any feathers or piss anyone off. And basically what it sounds like, even though they did keep him around, it sounds like he will definitely not have as much power as he did beforehand. So he hasn't done horrible per se, but yeah. Either way how it goes, he is not going to have as much power as he used to before Harbaugh got there. Now that Harbaugh's there, yeah, that power is changing hands just a wee bit. Matthew Stafford ends up signing an extension for a 1 year, $55 million, which is just kind of insane that, now he's playing on a 2-year deal worth $105 million. I mean, that dude's made a lot of money because he was a number 1 overall pick in the old CBA where some players were making like stupid amount of money before they even touched the field, especially if you were like a top 5 pick or something. So for the fact that Matt Stafford signed a 2-year extension, you got to think that he's at least basically what I'm kind of assuming now, and Adam Schefter kind of alluded to this a little bit, so maybe he knows something. I'm assuming Matt Stafford's going to play this year, probably play next year. Next year's going to be the final year. Regardless, I mean, if he doesn't end up playing after this season, I won't be too shocked, but I do think that he at least has 2 more years left in him. Regardless, I don't think he plays after because he's going to turn 39, I think, a week before the Super Bowl this year. I don't think he plays any time after 40. I could be totally wrong. Maybe he still has the juice in him, but this extension is kind of telling, like, all right, he probably has 2 more years left. That gives Ty Simpson 2 years to kind of sit and learn behind Matt Stafford and learn with John McVay. And then they'll probably turn it over to Ty Simpson if he's ready. If he's not ready, maybe they go to another veteran quarterback after that. But 1 year, $55 million, absolutely insane amount of money. You got to think, though, that it can be worth up to $60 million with incentives even. I'm just curious how long is Matt Stafford going to end up playing, because I think it's going to be 2 years, but he ended up throwing the ball well enough that he could maybe stay for a little bit longer, and it just comes down to health. But the quarterback is protected a lot more than they used to. It's just Matt Stafford is coming in with a lot of wear and tear on that tires from his years in Detroit. So it's all going to come down to, I think, if his body's going to be able to handle it or not. Robert Salah has come out and said that Cam Ward's about 10 pounds lighter, and he's... I didn't realize he had I totally forgot about his shoulder injury. So, this was just some stats about Cam Ward lately. He's lost 10 pounds based on the new health and nutrition plan they're running in Tennessee. And it sounds like he's the new wide receiver connections they have in Tennessee. Sounds like that's going well for him. And then the final one was his shoulder injury, which it sounds like his arm's perfectly healthy. And, I mean, he's got some good velocity on it. And I just like everyone else learning the system. But so far, so good. That came from Robert Saul himself. So, yeah, that's a really good sign for Cam Ward and good sign for Tennessee. I'll admit, I'm kind of optimistic about how Tennessee's going to do. I don't know fully about Cam Ward. Like, I don't think he's going to be horrible at all, but he's still very, very early on in his career, so I assume he's going to be somewhere in the top, somewhere around 15 to 20 when it comes to NFL quarterbacks consistently. I could be totally wrong about that, and he could end up being a top 10 guy. I just don't know what I don't know what to expect from him, genuinely. Like, even watching what he did last year, I thought he was good, but you look at it, it's like... I just don't know how to translate because their offense was just so putrid last year, honestly. Especially at the wide receiver position. The fact that Alec Alamaner was basically their best receiver, damn near. It's kind of... except for Chimere Dike, he also... but he was supposed to be mainly a special team guy, but he ended up becoming a decent, good receiver for them because their wide receiver core was just that horrendous, to say the least. But I'm curious to see with the better receiving core if he does take a little bit of a step up and it helps him out. Like I said, I don't think he's horrible by any means. He's one of those guys that so far, obviously he's only played 1 year, but early on, usually it's one of those things where you feel like you lean towards right away. It's like, oh, I don't think he's going to be too great. I don't think he's going to be too bad. I feel like I'm straight down the middle. After 1 year, it's like, I don't know what to expect from Cam Ward. I was just sitting here for a second, like, would I take him over Daniel Jones? And I was about to say yes, but then I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that's why I can't figure out with him. I am excited to watch him in this year, though. I do think that he is definitely going to be better for Tennessee. And I'll admit, it's one of those things that even as an AFC South guy that I'm looking at Tennessee like, well, it's annoying that they're going to start being a little bit better again because I was excited for them to be just horrible after they got rid of Rabel for multiple years. And now it seems like they might be slowly taking some steps in the right direction after a couple of years of just stumbling. So the Bears are insisting that there's no viable Chicago stadium on site, so they're focused on suburban Illinois and Indiana. If I had to assume anything, it's either this deal's going to get done with the stadium they're at, or they're going to end up going to Arlington. I still do not think the Indiana thing is more than just a leverage play, even if they're making it seem like, hey, we might actually move there. I mean, there could be like a 1% chance where they're actually considering it, but in my opinion, I think it's more of a leverage play to try to either get stuff cheaper or move to Arlington Heights, which sounds like has been kind of the thing they've wanted to do since day one. I don't know, man. This is one of those ones I'm just going to stay away from until we actually hear some news from it. It's just weird. I just don't know if I could see the Chicago Bears not being in Chicago. There's just certain stuff about that's one of those things. It doesn't seem like it sits right. We got another Achilles injury, sadly. It seems like there's just a lot of these popping up a lot more lately. Roy Robinson Harris tore his Achilles. They're in yesterday's practice. This was on May 22nd. That's a huge blow to their unit. He's on a first-year deal of a 2-year, $9 million contract he signed. And they also got rid of Dexter Lawrence, and he was one of the guys that was supposed to be one of the ones filling the holes, along with, I think one of them was Sheldon Richardson. I could be wrong about that. And then there's I tried. I tried for 10 seconds. I can't remember who it was. But they just signed somebody in the offseason. I think they just stole him from the Bengals, potentially. That they're basically using to fill up where Dexter Lawrence used to be. But I can't remember. I was trying to, but I can't remember who it just was. But the Cardinals and Jacoby Brissett apparently are significantly far apart on a rework deal, so Jacoby Brissett's still not showing up for stuff. Arizona Cardinals technically still don't have a starting quarterback unless they choose between Carson Beck or Gardner Minshew. If I had to guess the resolution that's going to come from this, these two sides are going to basically kind of do a bit of peacock and do a little bit of posture and a little bit of looking at each other, seeing who's going to move first, and then all of a sudden you're going to see Arizona offer him a couple more million to raise his contract, and he'll end up coming back and playing. This is one of those situations I honestly can't blame either side. If you're Jacoby Brissett, obviously you want to give more money or get more money, especially because if you are going to be a starting quarterback, if you look around the league, the money you're making, not too good if you look at the average pay for a starting quarterback. And if you're the Arizona Cardinals, you can also look at it as, well, we have Gardner Minshew and Carson Beck already. I mean, if you want to stay away. But at the same time, you think they would just take care of him and pay him just that couple extra million. But the Cardinals organization does do some wild things. They don't seem to... I don't want to say they run it poorly per se, but they do run it in a very weird way. Like I said, you would think this would just be a simple deal, like give him a couple more million, move on from it, and then you have your starter. You can not worry about it going into next year, this upcoming season. Not even next year, this upcoming season. But I don't know. They also do have Carson Beck, Gardner Minshew, so maybe they're seeing something that I am not. If you want to... Tell me if you've heard this one before. The Chargers have not closed the door on bringing back Keenan Allen. Feels like every year at this point, it's like, hey, Keenan Allen might go back to the Chargers again. This is not, I don't think, too shocking at all. This is something that definitely could happen. This might even happen mid-season, potentially. It's going to come down to all it takes is one or two injuries, and then boom, he's right back in the rotation. But we do this especially the last couple off seasons at this point. It seems like Keenan Allen sits out for a little bit, and then boom, he's a Charger. When he's healthy, he's good, even if he is a little bit older, but injuries have definitely started to catch up to him now that he's gotten 8 bits older in age. Florida has added a new law into act. It's called the Teddy Bridgewater Act, which is awesome. It basically allows coaches to pay up to $15,000 for high school students for like transportation, food, other stuff like that. There'll be strict rules regarding how and how much coaches spend. It would only, can spend. It would only apply to the team's head coach. Cannot be used in recruiting. It must be reported in full to the state AG, and it's capped to $15,000 per team per year. I'll admit it's nice they're doing this so they don't do like pay for play and recruiting and all that stuff. But at the same time, if a coach is willing to this goes into the situation where it's a little bit of a gray area, but like for Teddy Bridgewater, for example, he told supporters that he told basically his high school that he spent up to $6,000 some weeks for meals, rides, and other services for the team, including making sure the field is lined properly. In addition, $23.5K for the team's training camp costs and apparel. He said, "Look, there's some possible downsides to the structure if you don't have it." And that's basically, then they go on to talk about this law more. This is one rule that's honestly awesome, because if a coach is willing to do some of this stuff for his players, they should be able to, especially because, like, in high school, you really have some guys who are... But, I mean, this goes for, like, guys who are talented, who are not talented, but there's definitely some kids who just are really, really struggling. They're barely just hanging on. So, like, any little bit you can get to help them is just truly awesome. You just hope that this doesn't go in the wrong direction where they start using it for, like, recruiting or using it for other stuff. But you hope this just stays in the lane where it's like, hey, this guy doesn't know where he's going to find his next meal. Let's do that. Hey, let's lighten the load a little bit on some of these kids who, like, maybe can't afford pads or can't afford to, like, a ride to school. Let's be on, or ride to practice, stuff like that. Like, it's very simple stuff. You would hope that they would allow it. So the fact that it's starting in Florida and they passed that law, hopefully it's a thing that we see a little bit more of, because that's just a life thing in general, man. College in general is crazy, don't get me wrong, but high school is just absolutely insane, especially now looking back on it, being, what, how many years removed at this point? Almost. Shit, that's only like, I think 2 or 3 years away from being 10 years. Absolutely insane. But it's just crazy to think about it because as you grow up, obviously, you kind of look back at some of those moments in high school and you just realize, like, wow. Boy, was I wrong at the time for thinking the way I was. Especially because this is just a whole other side thing in general. The lunchroom, if you didn't have money to pay for lunches, that shit was borderline disrespectful, honestly. Here's a piece of cheese and 2 pieces of bread. Enjoy everyone staring at you for not having lunch money and then also enjoy not eating. That was just absolutely insane. But like I said, hopefully this law just helps out with situations like that. Because, man, I just had a little bit of flashback to high school and everything. That was just a wild times, like we said. Wild times. Jason Kelsey says the NFL has too many non-NFL Sunday games. One of the reasons the NFL got so big as it probably was, it was an event. And Sunday is the NFL. And everybody set their week apart to tune into their games that were happening on Sunday. I honestly think he's kind of right in this situation. Don't get me wrong, I definitely like, I would say spread out the games on Sunday a little bit more so you could have, especially because I'm mainly a red zone user on Sundays, so that way I can try to catch every single game I can, and then obviously I'll have the Colts game on, or I'll have the Colts game on, then another national game, or vice versa, and then if it's like 4 o'clock, I'll try to have like multiple screens of some national games on. But I mean, the league will have 197 Sunday afternoon games next season, down from 198 in 2025, 211 in 2021. Yeesh, let's try that stat again. 197 this year. There's 198 last year. 211 in 2021. And I'll admit, the part that kind of bothers me, like I said, a little bit, is just some of the games they're choosing to do. And it's just, some of the games, like, don't get me wrong. I don't mind some matchups, but if they start doing, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, if they start doing like the Pittsburghs, I mean, they're doing it this year, Rams 49ers in Australia, it's like, that's a division game. And it's like, you have this wild factor of now, like, hey, how do guys react to 16 hours of travel? Good luck. Don't get me wrong, I'm not like an old man, get off my lawn with some of this stuff, but I'll admit, it does get to a point where there seems like there are just so many games on so many days. And don't get me wrong, I have the time to watch it right now. So it's like, I enjoy it and I absolutely love it. And I'll try to make time to watch every NFL game I can. It's just, sometimes you look and there's some weeks where it's like, now, like, especially for Thanksgiving week this upcoming year. I haven't looked ahead at the schedule. I could be totally wrong. But actually, they might have that up. I'm pretty sure there's a game on like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, something like that. And especially if you throw in college in there, good luck, man. You got football every day of the week, which, don't get me wrong, is not too bad, but I'll admit, with the NCAA going longer and everything, it's like, it's causing me personally, like, and I love football, absolutely love it. I found myself, especially by, like, the end of the season, like, you get to, like, week 17, week 18, you start to go, like, okay, these games are starting to drag a little bit. I find myself not paying as close attention as I would. And it just gets to a point where it's like, don't get me wrong, I love the games, but it's just like, man, it's just so much overload. And then you get the college games where the championship game is almost not until February at this point. So then the college season drags for so long. So then it's just like, man, I'm not going to end up watching some college games. Then you get to the time now when you're 100 days away from it all, and you're just like, man, how could I not watch the game? Then you get back into it, it's kind of like, oh yeah, the burnout definitely was. Definitely got there a little bit. But yeah, I wanted to see real quick before we, what week is Thanksgiving? Let's check that out, because I just want to see what the schedule kind of looks like. So you got to win. So this is the Thanksgiving slate. 1 game Wednesday, 3 games Thursday, 1 game Friday, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 games Sunday, 1 game Monday. That is seriously almost a week of football. Tuesday, so we'll have a Monday night football game. So the Monday Night Football game you have the week before is Bengals Commanders. You get an off day Tuesday, and then you get a game Wednesday, get a game Thursday, get a game Friday. I'm going to be watching college that week if there's college games on, so then you get game Saturday. It's just insane. So you kind of get to a certain point where it's like, all right, now don't get me wrong, Thanksgiving's kind of a loaded slate every year anyway, so that's not, I know I'm cherry picking a super specific example, but I can kind of get with Jason Kelsey's coming from that point. But at the same time, you look at it, we love football. You're going to find a way to watch majority of these games, and I'm not the only one who's going to be doing that. We'll find a way to watch them. We'll enjoy them regardless. It's just I do kind of agree with him to a point where it's just like we are starting to get to that point now where it's like Sundays. I'm not going to say Sundays aren't going to be special because I definitely think they're still special, but you can see where it's like, okay, we are starting to. I mean, shit, we already have 10 overseas games, international games. You already know that's going to definitely pick up. With every team potentially having to play one overseas. So you just wonder at a certain point, it's like, when does it end? When do we stop just changing things for the sake of just changing them? But like I said, I don't want to dump on this too much because I do think a lot of what the NFL's done with the games has been pretty successful. As well as the upcoming season will have 23 standalone windows outside of the Thursday night and Monday Night Football, up from 15 last year. So like I said, that's another thing where it's like it's kind of hard to complain about it because it's like, hey, I love football, so having 23 standalone games outside of that stuff, it's like, all right, probably not going to complain about that. And the final thing I want to talk about, NFL-wise, actually, there's a couple more things. Sorry, there's basically two more things. So there's this: the Supreme Court won't intervene in Florida's discrimination suit against the NFL. So apparently, the Supreme Court on Tuesday refused to intervene in a discrimination lawsuit, allowing the case to proceed towards trial. I'll admit I'm not a big super courts, lawyers, all that type of stuff. I'll admit it's a little bit out of my field, so I don't know what exactly is going on. And the fact that this case is still going on is just absolutely insane, to be honest, like I said. So it's just a thing now. It's like it seems like that the Supreme Court won't get involved, so they're just going to allow this thing to keep going, and we're going to see where the ball ends up rolling at this point. But yeah, some stuff I want, like I said, to finish the NFL real quick. OTAs, some more teams that are going to OTAs. Colts, Jaguars, Chiefs, Chargers, Eagles, Packers, Vikings, Panthers, Buccaneers, Rams, and Seahawks all began their OTAs today. Just wanted to bring that up as well. That's an NBA thing we'll talk about in a minute. So apparently the Bill Stadium is on schedule for them to be able to on track to be ready for the upcoming season. The Bills have begun demolishing their old stadium piece by piece. So that's going to take until 2027 to start demolishing the old stadium, but it sounds like the new stadium's still going to be on track to be able to be played in. And I think this is actually the final NFL stat I want to talk about. This one just blows my mind when it comes to being favorited or dogs in games. We talked about the Cardinals being underdogs in all 17 of their games. The Cincinnati Bengals, they're favored to win 15 out of their 17 games. I'm not going to lie. They've gone... blows my mind. What was the stat? The last 5 seasons, there it is. 42-42, I believe, is their record. So, I just can't believe they're favored in that many games. I just kind of blew 15 to 17. It's like, and I'll admit, this is me without seeing their schedule. It just kind of blows my mind that it's that many. It's like, wow. Okay. And the final thing we'll talk about the Knicks real quick. Shout out to the Knicks making the finals for the first time in 53 years. There's just a couple stats I wanted to bring up when it comes to the Knicks and just the playoffs in general real quick. So the Knicks have won 11 in a row. The longest streak entering the finals since the playoff expansion in 1984 was the Warriors. At 12, who won the title. 11 in 2001 were the Lakers who won the title. 1989, Lakers won 11, didn't win the title, and now the Knicks are currently at 11. They're one of the better teams. They're going absolutely insane with the run they've been on. They're just... It's one of the all-time runs in the East, basically, is the best way to put it. Even with who they have played against, it's one of those runs that's just like truly special in a dominant fashion. And here's a fun little stat. Miami Heat, 2022, they lost to Eastern Conference Final Game 7 to the Boston, advanced to the finals. In 23, the Boston loses to 7 to Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals, advanced to the finals in 24. In 24, the Pacers lost to Boston in 4 in the Eastern Conference Finals. They made it to the finals. So now the Knicks in 2025, lose in the Eastern Conference Final to Indiana in 6. And then they reach the finals this year. So based on this stat, your Cleveland Cavaliers are your 2027 NBA Finals participants. Let me find that bet real quick. But no, one final thing I want to talk about real quick. Fun little stat. So they talk about some teams who have not So the Knicks snapped the 13th longest finals drought by an active franchise. So you just look at some of this list, some of the ones that, like, it's kind of insane. The Magic 2009, it's like, wow, it's been that long. Pistons is 2005. Nets 2003. Sixers 2001. The Knicks were 1999 until this. The Bulls were in 98. The Jazz were in 98. Absolutely insane. Seattle Supersonics OKC. Houston Rockets were 95. Trailblazers were 92. Wizards were 1979. Hawks were 1961. The Timberwolves have never done it. Clippers have never done it. Grizzlies have never done it. Pelicans have never done it. Hornets have never done it. This is one that blew my mind besides the Hawks. Sacramento Kings, 1951. This is just to reach the finals. This isn't even to win it. This is just to reach it. Blows my mind it's been that long. It's just like, wow. That's actually kind of insane. But thank you all for watching. Thank you for support. I really do appreciate it. We will be back in this feed tomorrow to go over some more NFL news, as well as we're going to try to predict 3 or 4 teams that are not going to make the playoffs this year, but also might make the playoffs. Because I go to the NFL, I believe it's 7 teams every year. It's either 5 to 7, I forget the stat. 5 to 7 teams that made it last year don't make it the year following, and 5 new teams end up going in. So we're going to try to project ahead of time to see if we can kind of guess on those teams and maybe even find some good betting odds for them. So I'll see everyone back in this feed tomorrow for that fun.